Welcome back, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing A Necessary End by Peter Robinson. This is book number 3 in his Inspector Banks series. Came out in 1989, and I've been collecting these books for years and years and years. In fact, I got the whole damn collection right there on my shelf. And we have reviewed the first 2 books in the series, and now we are going to be reviewing book 3. We always start with the covers. You know I love graphic design and illustration, so we always give the covers a shout out, especially if I think they're good. In fact, I think all of the covers in this series are great because it's just simple type, overlaying a great scene of a great English-British scene. This one happens to be of a cobblestone and a staircase with a little bit of cathedral in the background. Super. All the other covers look similar with great landscape photography of the British Isles, especially up near Yorkshire and York, where these books are set. So I love the set of books just in all. And if you look at them, don't they all look nice on the shelf? All the spines are really kind of cool and kind of match up together. I love it when publishers make an effort to make the series look consistent. You know, because I got OCD issues. If the publishers fuck that stuff up, I'm pissed. Anyway, this is about Inspector Banks. He is a London police officer who decided to take over the law enforcement in a small, sleepy little northeastern British village, thinking, well, this will be a lot easier than being a cop in London. But it turns out there's a lot of crazy crap that goes on in his town. So he's got to deal with things. And one of the things that happens here is the first chapter is a riot. They've got a political thing going on in the middle of town, and there's a big riot. And a police officer is killed in the riot. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, this was written in 1989. So book 3, there's like 27 some odd books in the series now. We're at book 3, so this goes clear back to 1989. I'm thinking to myself, we've got tons of political riots going along in our country, in America right now. And the way the police handle it, and the way that whether it's MAGA hat wearing rioters or Antifa rioters, the news describes things differently. And whether you're for cops or against cops, the news describes things differently. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is just today's problem. But then we read this book that was written in 1989, and we can see this kind of stuff has been going on ever since there were people that could argue about stuff. They've been rioting, and law enforcement have tried to stop the riots, and sometimes things go bad. And this is what happens. I wanted to read to you page 43 of this book, because it is like, you could put this in a book today and it would just be like, oh my God. Just listen to this. This is about the police riot, or the riots that the police had to intervene in. So, our main inspector, he turned back to the newspapers. The accounts varied a great deal. According to the left-wing press, the police had brutally attacked a peaceful crowd without provocation. The right-wing papers, however, maintained that a mob of unruly demonstrators had provoked the police into retaliation by throwing bottles and stones. In the more moderate newspapers, nobody seemed to know exactly what happened, but the whole affair was said to be extremely unfortunate and regrettable. I mean, MAGA hat riots, Antifa riots, whether the left-wing press, whether CNN is covering it, or whether Fox News is covering it, the story is gonna be wildly fucking different, because these jackasses in the press have agendas. And we think that's a new thing. That just cropped up in the last few years, ever since people got woke and ever since Trump. But no, even in 1989, the same bullshit. And Peter Robinson does a great job of pointing that out. Now, just judging from the tone of Peter Robinson novels, I'm saying he's probably a liberal-leaning dude, but I appreciate the fact that he can write about both sides equally well, and he understands the nuance of both the left and the right when it comes to police and policing and cop violence on citizens and citizen violence on cops. So anyway, the cop is killed in the riot right at the beginning, okay? And then Banks has to kind of figure out who killed him. And everybody, because nobody, like I said, the papers are being dishonest about who it may have been. Anybody that eyewitnessed it or whatever, they're kind of like foggy on what happened. Nobody really saw it, but it looks like the cop was stabbed in a way that it would have been more of like not a random stabbing, but like a planned and calculated assassination type stabbing. So that's what Banks is going on, and that's what he's got to figure out in this. But he's got a guy that comes up to kind of sort of a dude with a lot of political connections named Burgess, comes up to the sleepy little town where this murder has taken place, and he's like he's from London, and he's a big investigator from London. We're gonna send him up to set things straight, you know. And he kind of gets in the way of the investigation. He's like a pit bull terrier. Actually describes Burgess as a pit bull terrier type of cop. And I'm like, I haven't heard that term since the song Pit Bull Terrier, Pit Bull Terrier, Pit Bull. I mean, that's an obscure song. Some of you might get it, but I couldn't stop. The song was stuck in my head for weeks after reading this book, because Inspector Burgess was referred to as a real pit bull terrier of a cop. Anyway, I think I've talked too much about this book already. I think, I love all of the Peter Robinson books. I love that he not only is this about the crime itself, but it's about Inspector Banks's family. It's about all of that. I mean, because we get to know throughout the entire series, which I will show you again, we get to know Inspector Banks's kids and different relationships, his wives and ex-wives and different girlfriends, and we get to know them all throughout. So it's more about following this inspector through not only through murder case after murder case, but seeing how his family grows and has problems and grows apart and then comes back together. And so we get a lot of that in here too. So I just love these books for that reason. Peter Robinson, as Stephen King says on the cover, the best series on the market. Try and tell me I'm wrong. That's what Stephen King says. And I agree. I think it's a great, great series. I give A Necessary End. I loved it because I work law enforcement. If you've been following my channel, you know that I work law enforcement. And so this one was specifically about a cop that had been killed, and we get a lot of talk and discussion about law enforcement in this one. And so I really dug this one. Probably my favorite of the first three. Probably my favorite, but there's some dynamite ones coming up. So stay tuned, folks. We're going to review them all. I give this a 9 out of 10.